So the format for this morning, the Chamber does not endorse candidates. Our role is to help educate the public on the candidates so that they can then make an informed decision on whom to vote for. The Chamber's Government Affairs Committee, with input from our members, created the questions being asked this morning. We will not have questions from the audience. This will just be strictly done by the moderator. The candidates' responses will be time limited. Our timekeeper up here, Donna, will keep track of the time and alert the candidates as they're getting closer with green, yellow, red. And again, some of the... So 30 seconds left, candidates, is yellow. When the red comes on, we'd like you to finish your sentence. We will enforce this. We appreciate your cooperation ahead of time and respect the time limits. We know we could all talk at depth for a lot longer in many cases, but we need to get through a number of questions. Some of the questions have a little bit longer to answer, and our moderator will tell you the candidates what they are. But again, yellow, 30 seconds, and then red, we ask you just to finish your thought on that. Aaron Petronetz is our moderator. Again, he'll let us candidates know if you need to stop, and he'll have a number of questions to ask along the way. And it's now my pleasure to introduce our election form sponsor. They sponsor these forms every election year. Representing Jamison Door Company is their president, Mr. Dwight Clark. Please help me welcome Dwight.
The Jamison Door Company has been supporting the business community and the community at large in Washington County for over 115 years and counting. And on behalf of the employees, the company, and we have over 200 retirees in the community as well. We want to thank you for allowing us to sponsor forums such as this that we see as such a benefit to the business community as well as the community at large. And we look forward to hearing some very interesting presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwight, and thank you, Jamison Doors, for your longtime support of the Chamber and our activities and for being in the community so long. Thanks for all you do. It's now my pleasure to introduce our moderator this morning. From our Government Affairs Committee, please help me welcome Mr. Aaron Petronetz.
Good morning. So, could I welcome the candidates up to the stage, please? Also, Paul, I don't know if you mentioned already, but on the tables are the answers to the pre-forum questions. Okay, so all the candidates were given pre-forum questions, and their responses were printed verbatim, I believe, in the pamphlets on the table. So, something to take home and read, I guess. So, good morning. Thank you for being here. We have a total of 17 questions, and every candidate will get to answer every question. The order in which the candidates answer is randomized, so each question will be a different order, but every candidate has the same amount of time and the same number of questions. I will let you know what the length of time to answer each question will be. Most of them are a minute, some are 30 seconds, some are 90 seconds, 45 seconds, but the longest is 90 seconds, the shortest is 30 seconds. So, should we get started? I think so. All right. Yes. Oh yeah, don't turn off your mic. Just put it down, because if you turn it off, it has to recycle and reconnect and gets all messed up. And you can say things, you know, hot mic, and we'll get that too, so. We do have a disco ball too, so get crazy. So, all right, let's get started. The first question is, do you consider yourself to be a visionary or a pragmatic problem solver? Why? And give an example of how you have demonstrated how you solve problems. Mr. Albert, first.
I consider a visionary. I'll give an example at the 911 center where I currently work. I'm the assistant director there. You know, when I came in, we didn't have any long-term plans for the center or where it was going to go. And currently, you know, we analyze that, and now we have a CIP project, and that'll come in 2 years to where we're going to rebuild the center. And, you know, we have to do a lot of planning because there's a lot of state money that will come into play and with the 911 board. So they will fund a lot of our equipment. Anything that touches a phone, they will fund. So if we build the building, then they will, you know, fund anything that we have to do for a phone call.
Thank you. Mr. Alton.
I also consider myself a visionary. One of the things during my career, when we faced a lot of crime in progress, the sheriff would come to me and say, Greg, can you look into this and do something about it? My supervisors were a little bit more direct. They would say, fix it. And that's what we did. We would sit down, we would analyze the data, the times that these incidents were occurring, and then we would put a plan together, and then we would go out and affect that plan many times very effectively. Thank you.
Mr. Holsinger. Oh, see? Hello. How's our mic? There you go. Yeah, the other one's good.
I believe I'm both, actually. I believe I am visionary in that I have developed many crime prevention strategies for the community to deal with very specific problems. But I'm also pragmatic in that I understand that we still have a job to do with standard law enforcement. And directed enforcement, I think, is still very important, identifying problems in the community and using enforcement to be able to resolve those problems while we're trying to deal with the root of the issue and try to resolve the overall issues.
Thank you. Mr. McLeod.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I want to believe that I'm a problem solver in the sense that I believe in proper communication, and I think communication is the key to most issues. If we have proper communication, most of the times we can solve a lot of problems that we encounter. I don't think people know how to communicate, and because of the lack of communication, it's very difficult to sometimes get issues or problems on the whole solved at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
Good morning. I believe I'm a visionary as well. You know, I just like solving problems. Being in the bail bond business for 24 years and tracking fugitives, we have a lot of issues in-state, out-of-state, so it takes a lot of different, you got to kind of be like half detective, half criminal. You got to get in their mindset and be able to, you know, track people that don't want to be found. So that takes a lot of planning, a lot of effort, and that's what I like to put forth.
Thank you. All right. Second question. How would those who know you best describe your strengths, and how would they describe the areas that you need to strengthen? We'll start with Mr. Holsinger.
Well, I think that anytime you're in working with the community, there's always going to be aspects of the, especially with law enforcement and crime prevention, that you're going to have people say they don't feel like they're being reached. So you need to listen to those people, and you need to listen to the community. I also believe that even from an enforcement standpoint, the police are powerless without the cooperation of the community. So that would be how we would take a good thing and make it better through communication.
Thank you. Mr. McLeod.
Can you repeat the question?
I can. How would those who know you best describe your strengths, and how would they describe the areas you need to strengthen?
I think most people who knows me would tell you that I'm a good communicator in regards to getting problems solved. When I worked at Maryland State Parole and Probation, there were issues that I encountered, and because of my communication skills, I was able to get them resolved much quicker than my supervisor, who would have been able to do the job, but because of proper communication with this particular individual, I was able to get the problem solved.
Do you have a weakness?
I've never found it. No one has ever told me that I have a weakness, so I'm sorry.
All right. Mr. Alton.
I would say for my strengths, they would describe me as committed, dedicated, with a strong work ethic. And along with that comes what my weakness would be, and that would be that I'm too much of a perfectionist, and sometimes don't just know when to relax. Always driven, always on the go. And I think, especially if you talk to my wife, that's what the answer you get.
Mr. Albert.
I think people would describe me as reliable and responsive. Just an example of that, when I worked at DNR for 28 years, I was in the law enforcement side, but people would call me with a boat registration question. I was always trying to get those people the answers. So I'm customer service driven, they would say. Probably my weakness, I probably take on too many projects. At one time I coached 4 soccer teams in one season, so that was a little, and I didn't understand why my wife was upset with me. But probably take on a little bit too much on my plate and don't delegate enough.
Mr. Williams.
I think one of my strengths is I like to communicate with people, law enforcement. I like to be around the people in the community, be active in my community, and like to get the job done. I don't like to start something and not finish it. So I do like to get the job done. I always have people in mind. I always have somebody else's back, even if it comes, at my own loss. So I usually put people first.
All right.
And my weakness is I've been told that I put people first too much, and my wife kind of gets on me about that one. So.
All right. Thank you. Third question. How many business owners have you personally talked to over the past 60 days? And please tell us about some of those conversations and how they are influencing your run for office. Mr. Holsinger.
Well, I actually talk to a lot of business owners because I'm still a working police officer. So my contact with them has been oftentimes because there's issues. As far as talking about the campaign, obviously I don't do that on duty. But the big thing with the community and working with businesses is trying to figure out what it is with regard to safety and security that really means the most to them. They really like the threat readiness programming that I've developed, and that's something that as sheriff I plan on implementing.
Thank you. I was asked to remind everyone. So all the questions are 60 seconds unless I say otherwise. Is that good? Mr. Alton.
Well, I'm in the middle of a campaign, so I've talked with many business owners over the last 60 days. Between that and also being a member of the chamber, and I'm on the payroll for asset protection at Belk. So I'm constantly in contact with business owners or other retail. I think that benefits my run for sheriff on staying in contact with what's going on as far as the businesses throughout the community to know what problems that they are facing and what we can do to help solve them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
I've spoke to many businesses. I've always been a people person, been around the community. My business as bail bonds and bail enforcement, we rely heavily on the community, people in the area, to give us information. Also, my firearms instruction. I've done a lot of handgun qualifications for business owners because of the huge uptick in crime we've had in Washington County over the last few years.
Thank you. Mr. Albert.
Probably just the same as everyone else, too numerous to count. I grew up in a small family-owned business, so it was kind of my roots in a mom and pop grocery store east of Clear Spring, west of Hagerstown. What I've found with most all the owners that I've talked to or business people is they're all vested in the community. They want us to succeed. And, I think one of the first steps of that is, getting crime under control here in Washington County so we have to protect our way of life. Most of us up here, I think, grew up in the community, and we're used to that way of life, and that's what I get from the business community, that they want to protect that so their businesses can thrive here in Washington County.
Thank you. Mr. McLeod.
I've spoken to a number of businesses downtown Hagerstown, and most of the times the complaints are people with mental health, the drug issues, what are we going to do about it? And I said, well, this is a combination of the sheriff department and the community. If you work with us, we'll work with you, but if you're not giving us information for us to work with you, how can we solve the issues? So as I said, the issues that has been spoken about is mental health, mainly, drug issues, and the youths downtown, the kind of activities they get themselves involved into.
Thank you. Fourth question. Which of your leadership skills make you our best choice for sheriff? Please give a specific example of how you have used those skills in a work situation. Mr. Albert.
I think that I lead by example. I feel that, if I'm not willing to do the job, you can't ask your employees to do the job. I'll give you an example of back during the Freddie Gray riots in Baltimore. I was stationed there as a lieutenant, and no one else wanted to take that night shift. We were working overnight, 12-hour shifts, very taxing time, and I was the only commander from my agency that wanted to work that overnight shift, and I was out on the streets with the officers doing the same job that they were doing. So lead by example.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
The same thing. I mean, I've always been one that I would not expect anybody under my command or that worked for me to do something that I would not do myself. So I want everybody that, not for glory or anything else, but in the 24 years I've been doing fugitive recovery, I was always the first one to go through the door because I want my guys to see that I'm doing the same thing that they're doing. And they appreciate that when you don't send them in harm's way, something that you wouldn't do on your own.
Thank you. Mr. McLeod.
Can you repeat the question?
I can. Which of your leadership skills makes you our best choice for sheriff? Please give a specific example of how you have used those skills in a work situation.
Again, I want to elaborate on communication. It's very important. Again, communication. And if you know how to communicate and you have that particular skills, it makes things much easier. I've worked with the New York City Criminal Justice for a number of years before I came to Hagerstown, and I had a very good relationship with the judges, the DAs, the different law enforcement agencies that came down to Central Booking, and they always used to say, man, I just like how you talk, man. I just love it. And again, as I said, communication, 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 communication.
Thank you. Mr. Holsinger.
Well, I currently serve as a patrol shift commander for the agency. And in that position, I actually have the opportunity to work and direct people from all three of our divisions. And I think as sheriff, it's very important that we look at the agency not only as a police agency, but also as a correction agency and also as an agency that services the courts. So being involved in all three of those divisions and being that in a supervisor capacity a large amount of the time, whether it's handling motor vehicle accidents that happen with other divisions' equipment, or whether it's something that could be of a personnel nature, I feel that I'm most suited.
Thank you. Mr. Alt.
Commitment and experience. I was a detective for 18 years, and even when I wasn't the on-call detective, the supervisors that were working or patrol units that were working knew that they could call me. I would pick up the phone at any time and answer. I ran special operations while on vacation at the beach. I ran special operations while on a hospital bed in Baltimore. So my dedication level, my experience is the 20-plus years that I spent on the street in the trenches where the patrol units and the men and women on the street know that I know exactly what they've gone through. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the next, now we've gotten your background on leadership. The next section deals with the role of the role of the sheriff in moving Washington County forward. So, 5th question. If elected, what are your specific priorities for your first 90 days in office? Mr. Albert.
Probably for the first 90 days, I'm someone that comes in and observes and watch what's going on. I feel that our biggest, and learn the agency a little bit and talk to the employees, get their feedback of what they need and, you know, what we can do to make their jobs easier. I think the biggest thing facing us as law enforcement, regardless of who is elected, we, you know, we have to work on recruitment and retention. We have to keep those consistent officers and deputies there in all aspects of the department. We have to have people long-term so they're vested in our community, and that'd be my priority for the first 90 days and throughout my administration.
Thank you. Mr. Holsinger.
My first priority, and I want to start this actually in January, I want to make the DARE Keeping It Real program available to our public schools. That is a huge priority to me. Additionally, I want to make sure that our outreach efforts are invigorated. We used to have a very strong crime prevention unit years ago, and I want to bring that back so that we can reach out not only to businesses but to communities. Neighborhood watches and other types of relationship building things that we can do within the community will be my goal first.
Thank you. Mr. Alton.
For the first 90 days, we're going to hit the ground running from day one. In fact, we've already started to put plans in place. Staffing is obviously one of the big issues that we want to look at. We want to sit down and work with the county commissioners to develop a 4 or 6-year plan so that we can get deputies into the communities that don't normally see a patrol unit. The far southern end of the county, the far western end of the county, Cascade, those areas that don't normally see deputies. We want to get those areas patrolled heavily, and that's what we will do in the first 90 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
I think if I was to get sheriff in November, the first thing I would work on is the morale of the sheriff's department. Our officers don't feel that, you know, anyone has their back. Also, with them losing their Bill of Rights come July 1st, that would be one of my biggest priorities. I've already started trying to implement to have their Bill of Rights reinstated. If our officers can't do their job, then there's no sense in even having a police department. So fixing that would be #1 priority, and fixing the disconnect between the police and the community.
Thank you. Mr. McLeod.
I want to reiterate on what this gentleman just said. One of the things, as he mentioned, most of the time the officers feel like someone don't have their back. And I think it's important for officers to know the commander, the chief, or whoever is in charge have their back at all times. Too many times officers go out and get themselves into difficulties and they're left alone. I want officers to be able to go back home to their family when they come out to do their 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, how many ever hours it is that they have to do. And that way they can go back home to their family and don't have to wonder, if I did this, what's going to happen? Who's going to have my back? And I'm going to have their back.
Thank you. Question number 6. What will you do to move the county forward that may be different than the other candidates for sheriff? What perspective can you bring that may be different? Mr. Williams.
I believe that moving the county forward, like I say, first thing is making our officers feel comfortable with the administration. Make sure that they know that when they go out there, I wouldn't expect to put them in a situation that I would not be in myself. And fixing the disconnect between the patrol division, the correctional side of the sheriff's department, and the community itself. That's one of the main things I would want to do if I was become sheriff in November.
Thank you. Mr. Albert.
I feel that we just need to be more vested as a department, as the sheriff's office in the community. You know, I go to, obviously, we are all at multiple events throughout that are community events, and we don't have those deputies there that are involved in our community. And I think that's the biggest thing that I would like to see is, you know, when I was stationed in Baltimore, I was stationed throughout the state during my 28-year career, and I wasn't as vested in when I was stationed in Baltimore as I was when I was home, where I live. So I want to make sure that we give some incentives to live here and work here and be vested in our community, but that's a different aspect I would have.
Thank you. Mr. Alton.
We're going to start by being proactive as far as getting out and arresting the criminals and making the community feel safe. Our community has been rocked by violence in the last 2 weeks, and I've talked to people and they just don't feel safe in the community. So we're going to be aggressive on that end. And then I go back to working with the county commissioners to get additional resources and additional deputies to get into the communities that don't normally see a police car on a regular basis, setting up satellite offices so we can be more involved in those communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McLeod.
One of the things I would like to do is implement a community policing service system where the officers, the deputies get familiarized with the community, know the people in the neighborhood. So in that way, when an incident takes place, we know who lives at this address, who lives at this address, and in that way, the deputy doesn't have to go there with excessive force to just drag out or whatever the case is. Hagerstown is a diverse community. So we definitely need to know the different type of cultures that live in Hagerstown, and that way we can communicate with each individual and get the help, provide the help that each individual needs in Hagerstown, Washington County.
Thank you. Mr. Holsinger.
I want to unify our divisions. We have a lot of opportunities for training where the detention center, our judicial, and patrol can actually train together. You know, things like first aid, things like bringing our CERT team from the jail and our SRT from patrol together to do some joint trainings. I want the divisions to know one another. Right now, a lot of the times, they're strangers, and I think we need to fix that first moving forward.
Thank you. Question 7. The sheriff is the face of county law enforcement. How will you present initiatives to the citizens to garner their feedback and support? For example, a citizen review panel. Mr. Alton.
As the sheriff of the citizens, I'm going to be very active and involved, just like I have been my entire career in community service. Serve on the board of directors for justice's sake, which is to raise awareness against child abuse. Be involved with the community programs, not just for the enforcement angle, but to get out and meet the people in the community. Put together programs where we can get into the community and talk with the community and find out what their needs are and what they want to see from their law enforcement agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Holsinger.
My plan is, number one, to have a weekly YouTube broadcast so that the community knows what the sheriff's office is doing. I think that's really important. Additionally, I believe that annually we're going to distribute some type of report card. We already do this every 3 years. I'd like to make it every year so that people can give us their feedback, tell us what they'd like to have, tell us the type of services that they're looking for. Oftentimes, this is where we're going to be able to help direct our prevention efforts. I think that's really important.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
I think a big thing would be out and talk to the community more, find out what the community wants, what they want for the next administration, which is to see more officers in their community, whether it's being proactive and not just showing up when a call comes out. My biggest thing is, you know, I believe there should be accountability. Being in the bail bond business, I've been around the judicial system, law enforcement, and our judicial system, I believe, is severely broken. You know, I've had people that I knew absolutely 100% that were guilty and get let off with a plea bargain or out the door with nothing. So I believe in holding those people accountable from the state's attorney level, clear up.
Thank you. Mr. McLeod.
The first thing I would do is, as a sheriff, is go around to the neighborhood, the community, probably house to house, maybe every other day, get to know the people in the neighborhood, find out what is their needs, what is missing, what do they want the sheriff office department to do, what are we not doing, and what do they want us to do. In that way, we can get information from the community. We have a lot of hate crimes. We have a lot of crimes on the LGBT. These people are human beings just like everybody else. They also have to be protected. So again, I'm going to go out there and provide a service. That would be my job.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott.
Can you read the question real quick?
I can. The sheriff is the face of county law enforcement. How will you present initiatives to the citizens to garner their feedback and support? For example, a citizen review panel.
Okay. Well, I understand that the sheriff is the face, but in my opinion, I think the uniform needs to be the face. You know, the badge, the vehicle. We need to be vested in the communities. We need to attend town meetings. The only time our towns and municipalities see anyone is this time of year when there's election year. And I'm sure all of us have been to those town meetings. That needs to be a regular thing. Maybe not every town meeting in Smithsburg or Boonesboro, but quarterly, I think we need to be vested in our municipalities so they can put a name to a face. And, you know, because you just remember a person when you speak to them, and you're like, oh, I remember that guy. I'll give him a call, or that lady, and I'll give them a call and see if they can help me out. So I feel that it's not just the sheriff's face. It should be the uniform that's the face of the sheriff's department.
Thank you. I want to point out that we leave it to the cops to be completely on time and not going up against the clock, and it's good. All right. Question number 8. How do you see your role as sheriff in working with our Board of County Commissioners? Start with Mr. McLeod.
I think the Board of Commissioners has a very tough job to do, and we as sheriffs, the deputies, have to be able to communicate with the commissioners in regards to arrests and who should be provided bail and all that different type of stuff. We shouldn't be, as this gentleman said, too many times people come in with serious crimes and they get let go, and we have to protect our community at all times.
Thank you. I brought up the time, and I forgot to mention that this question is 30 seconds, which you stayed under without even knowing. Thank you. Mr. Albert.
I feel it's key. All 5 commissioners are obviously elected officials, along with the sheriff. So we have to work together to keep conservative efforts on the budget with providing the best service that we possibly can. So, there's a lot of things that we really have to look at. Basically, it's budget, but we have to have our priorities in line so we can agree on how we move forward for the county.
Thank you. Mr. Holsinger.
I will not go to the county commissioners and ask them for anything that I don't need. And if there is something that I need, I'm going to try to have a plan to pay for it before I set before them.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
The biggest thing was county commissioners' transparency. I spoke to a couple of the county commissioners with the administration that's there now. They feel like there's no transparency between the county commissioners and the sheriff's department. So I think that's one thing that needs to change. Also, going in front of them, if you have to, like, I've been trying to have them allocate funds to reinstate the officer's Bill of Rights. It's been difficult, but if transparency was there, I think it'd be a lot easier.
Thank you. Mr. Walton.
I touched on that briefly earlier, where I want to meet with the commissioners as soon as we get into office and sit down and develop a 4 to 6 year plan on getting staffing for the detention center, staffing for patrol, staffing for our judicial division. And I would actually like to meet monthly with the commissioners just to update them and just let them know what's going on at the sheriff's office and what type of things we're seeing and what they are hearing and what they need from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 9, also 30 seconds. How do you see your role as sheriff in working with other law enforcement agencies in the various municipalities and the state? Mr. Holsinger.
We will continue to provide law enforcement training to those municipalities that don't have their own trainers. And we will network with them with different types of issues that may be city, county, or municipality county situations. I think it's going to be very important that that partnership remains strong and that we continue to build on it.
Thank you. Mr. Albert.
We need to cooperate and coordinate with our state municipalities here in the county. The smaller departments, obviously, we can support them in any way possible because they're limited on manpower in Boonesboro, Hancock, and Smithsburg. But with Hagerstown City and the state, and even our federal partners, we need to work more closely together to coordinate our efforts here in the county.
Thank you. Mr. McLeod.
Where that is concerned, we would have to, again, as the last gentleman, coordinate with different law enforcement when help is needed, because Washington County Sheriff Department is a very small department. So we would have to collaborate with other law enforcement within the city limits, and that way we can get assistance to help with certain crimes that needed to be helped with.
Thank you. Mr. Alton.
I'm going to expand it from not just Maryland, but I'm going to expand it to the other states because crime knows no state boundaries. During my career, I was best known for working with other agencies, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, our federal law enforcement officers. We had the shooting in Smithsburg, and how important was that we used the federal resources. Locally, we work great with HPD, Smithsburg, Boonesboro, all the municipalities, and that will continue as me being sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
Definitely work with all local and surrounding agencies. Offer better training for officers, being a firearms instructor. I could also help in that aspect, offering training and live fire training with our officers and all different agencies around the county and out of state.
Thank you. Question 10, we're going to do 2 minutes on this. I got a note from Paul. So, this question regards implementing the new police accountability legislation. There were more than 20 new pieces of state legislation adopted in 2021 which directly impact law enforcement. In particular, what are your plans to manage the implementation of HB 670, which repeals the Maryland Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, SB 71, requiring the use of body-worn cameras on or before July 1st, 2025, SB 178, no-knock search warrant changes, say that 5 times fast, and what, if any, additional new police accountability laws are you aware of? And you want me to read that again? So, what are your plans to manage the implementation of HB 670, which repeals the Maryland Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, SB 71, requiring the use of body-worn cameras, and SB 178, the no-knock search warrant changes, and then what, if any, additional new police accountability laws are you aware of? We will start with Mr. Albert.
I think we are moving into a new age with this, with not having the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. That we're not sure exactly, when I say we, the law enforcement community, we're not sure where we're going or how we're going to get there. It's changed the landscape. The commissioners, I think, are in the process of appointing the Citizen Advisory and Accountability Board, which I'm sure I know that we had a large interest in that, which was, that's encouraging for us that we had that interest in that board here in the county. One thing that I would like to do, being involved through the FOP previously and working for officers' rights and Bill of Rights, one thing that I would like to do is work with the commissioners to sponsor a umbrella policy, basically, for the officers to be able to purchase individually at a discounted rate if it's, like a joint policy that would cover them for, liability if they were sued or if they're to protect their family, protect their house. We've always heard of that happening, officers losing their house and being civilly liable. So that's one thing I'd like to look into with the insurance that carrier to work on. The body-worn cameras, I'm pretty sure that the sheriff's office is already in compliance with that and have been for some time. Sheriff Mullendore was, on the forefront of having those in the county. And then the no-knock warrants. We're going to have to look at the training and, how we go about that to make sure the officers are their safety's first and foremost when serving those warrants, and that, the different ways that we're going to have to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Alton.
This is obviously a hot button topic nationwide, and is the driving force to why I came back and decided to run for sheriff when they came out with the defund the police movement and the anti-law enforcement. I will agree that reform is needed. Reform is needed in any profession. I have mixed reviews. The body-worn cameras, I'm all for. I believe that protects the citizens and also protects law enforcement. You're losing a lot of good police officers because of taking away the law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights. And that's something that I will continue to fight in Annapolis with legislators. I've talked with legislation. I've talked with law enforcement. And I will continue to talk with the legislators to try and bring that back. No-knock search warrants. I have a problem with people sitting behind a desk, behind a locked door, protected by the very people that they're trying to defund, telling law enforcement, telling the experts of how they should do their jobs and when they should be able to do their jobs. I have an issue with that, and I will be a strong voice in Annapolis and a strong presence in Annapolis to fight for our law enforcement officers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McLeod.
Body cams, body cameras, however they want to describe it, I think is very important. I think it helps the officers and it also helps the citizens. Most times officers turn their cameras off, and I think when that is done, officers will be held accountable. And you'd have to be able to articulate exactly why your camera is off, was being off. The no-knock warrants, I think that's a very critical situation, because most of the times officers' lives are put at risk with this no-knock warrant situation, just going into people's house. You don't know who's in the house. You don't know who's behind the closed doors. So I think that's a topic that Congress will have to deal with. As for right now, body cams are important. It protects the officers and it protects the citizens.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Yes, the House Bill 670, the Officers' Bill of Rights, been against it. This actually come down from February of 2021, and it seems that the law enforcement, Maryland State Police, and other law enforcement agencies were behind this and said that it needed to happen for the officers. Pretty much it separates the agencies and takes the liability off the agencies and puts it directly on the officers back themselves. Body cameras, I'm advocate for body cameras. I love body cameras. You know, it tells you the truth. What a video is worth 1,000 words. So you can definitely see what's going on both aspects. As long as when it goes to trial, that, mysteriously body cam footage disappears and it's not available. The no-knock search warrants you're given from being in the bail enforcement for 24 years, you're giving the criminals the advantage. Anytime you're putting officers at risk, we want to take their Bill of Rights away. Now we want to advertise what time they're allowed to come and knock on your door and serve a search warrant. Definitely not a fan of that. It gives all the criminals the advantage. And we want the element of surprise is the biggest thing when you're trying to effect an arrest. I've offered, like say, there's a company called U.S. Law Shield that would reinstate the officer's Bill of Rights. It covers them criminally, civilly. They have an attorney. Everything's covered while they're in their line of duty. I've proposed that to the county commissioners. been in front of them 3 times. It's been 2.5 months, and it's just been crickets with the county commissioners as far as an answer. So that's something we needs to be worked on.
Thank you. Mr. Holsinger?
As I've stated a couple times, I'm a working police officer, so I'm living this. And what I'll tell you is with the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights being removed, what that did was create a vacuum in the agencies, because the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights mainly was the fundamental list of things, the process, if you will, of dealing with administrative disciplines and things of that nature. The Sheriff's Office is currently maintaining their own matrix, which mirrors the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights, which I will continue to do as sheriff. So the personnel aren't going to lose that. With regard to body-worn cameras are the best thing that's ever happened to law enforcement. As a shift commander, it's great for me to receive a complaint on one of my people, and I can simply pull up the camera footage, and I can either see that my person did something wrong or that they, in fact, did not do anything wrong. It has really sped up the process for complaints. The no-knock issue, yeah, that's an issue, and that's something that we're going to have to look at. Obviously, we're going to have to be in compliance with this law. I do believe that as this moves forward, we're going to see case law change some of this. Unfortunately, there's probably going to be some people that are going to be put in the hopper until those things are worked out, and I just pray that it's not one of my personnel.
Thank you. The next question, 11, you'll have 90 seconds. The next few questions deals with challenges facing our community. What are your plans to address the socioeconomic problems we face in Washington County, including, and in particular, the impact of opioid addiction? First, do you view addiction as a law enforcement issue? Why or why not? And if so, how will you address that issue? And if not, what other resources can you bring to bear to address the impact of addiction? Mr. Holsinger.
Well, I think law enforcement has to play its part in this. This is a battle. It's a community battle. I'm really tired of notifying parents that their children have overdosed. That's part of my job. So to be able to do something with this is very important to me. I have a 3-prong approach. Prong 1 is, and I mentioned this earlier, I want to get some education available to our children. I want to implement the Keeping It Real program in the Washington County schools if at all possible. I want it to be available, private schools as well, so that we can start to talk about good decision making and building relationships with law enforcement early on. Number 2, I want to make sure that we're providing services to addicted inmates that we have in our correctional facilities. If they want help, we want to make sure that they get help. We want to offer them every opportunity so that their stay with us is beneficial. And third, I think we need to address the crimes that support drug activity. Things like retail theft, because obviously that's an issue. Also catalytic converter theft, it's huge. I'd like to be able to incentivize for those scrappers, these people that are buying these catalytic converters, so that we can try to slow that process down and get that money off the streets.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
The opioid addiction is definitely a problem. As a volunteer firefighter for the last 12 couple years, you know, I've seen a lot of it. I've had to Narcan many people. But the biggest problem with there is you have to have somebody that wants to help. If the help is there, they have to want to be receptive of it. So that's a big issue, and it is a law enforcement problem because we deal with it every day. Like Mr. Holsinger just said, the theft, everything else from businesses, from catalytic converters, everything else, it stems all down from that. So I think the biggest thing with that is, you know, there again, accountability. Holding people accountable, like if they get arrested on a theft charge, not a slap on the wrist, right back out on the street, do it again. And that comes from the state's attorneys all the way up to our judges and everything else. They have to hold these people accountable that are actually doing the crimes. That's the only way I feel we're going to stop it.
Thank you. Mr. McLeod.
Pertaining to that question, I think we need to have more drug rehabilitation programs within the community to help some of these folks who are involved in this type of drugs. As the gentleman said, with that being said, that most of the times these folks look for activities to get money to buy the drugs. And if they keep doing it and getting a slap in the wrist and getting sent back out to the community, then there's no help for them, because then they go out, steal, come out, sell it, get the money, buy the drugs, and it's going to be recurring and recurring and recurring. So we have to have some type of help program in place for individuals of that state.
Thank you. Mr. Alton.
It's absolutely a law enforcement issue, and we have a multi-pronged approach that we're going to implement as soon as we get into office. We're going to proactively and aggressively go after the dealers that continue to deal this poison to our children, working backwards through retail crimes and other crimes to get to the dealers. We will also work with those that want help or seek our assistance. My chief deputy, Josh McCauley, actually runs the law enforcement assisted diversion program at the sheriff's office, which sets people up who want help with resources in the community and to get them in touch. He's also on the mental health board, because obviously we know that a lot of these problems have the mental health underlying issues with it. We will work with other agencies for the treatment. Since I've been running for sheriff, I've met with people from Brooks House and Day Reporting Center and other agencies, and we will continue to work with those agencies. And we will be there not just for when there are setbacks and for when there are failures, but we will also be there to celebrate the victories and the accomplishments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alton.
It's absolutely a law enforcement issue. I came on the job in 1991, and we've been fighting the war on drugs ever since, and probably prior to me starting. You know, I would probably venture to say, and I don't have any statistics, but probably 95% of our crime in the county is some way related to the drug world. You know, we definitely have to attack those high level dealers and make sure that they get a stiff punishment for either traveling through or bringing it here into our county. Along with the addiction side, we need to give every resource possible to anyone that wants and needs help, and just try to get that to them. Work with the other agencies within the county. One thing that I learned going through leadership Washington County, that there's so many resources out there that are untapped, and there's so many different organizations that have and offer help, from, you know, rent assistance the whole way up, which can help someone, you know, recover. So, and it's probably touched everyone in this room in some way, and we just need to give that support, offer the help, and we need to, you know, make sure the high level dealers get the punishment they deserve.
Thank you. Question 12, we'll have 45 seconds. The Day Reporting Center has been in existence for about 3 years. Do you support this initiative? Why or why not? And what do you see as the future for the Day Reporting Center? We'll start with Mr. McLeod.
I'm not familiar with the Day Reporting Center, so I will have to plead the fifth on that question.
All right. Mr. Albert.
Yeah, the Day Reporting Center definitely has a part to play. It's making positive changes in our community, and to working with the detention center currently, and some of the staff. We have some new people in administration there recently, within I think the last 12 to 18 months, and they're making new incentives and new programs, and I think they're having an impact on the community and helping the Sheriff's Department, you know, address this issue.
Thank you. Mr. Holsinger.
The Day Reporting Center does serve a very important function. One of the pieces that I like the most is the preparation for the job world once a person leaves the program. As long as we can consistently see proven results, it has a home at the Sheriff's Office.
Thank you. Mr. Alton.
I met with the new director of the Day Reporting Center and had a meeting with her, and I completely support the Day Reporting Center. I believe we can even expand the Day Reporting Center to include pre-sentence supervision. which will help the courts and will also bring in more clientele to the day reporting center. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
The day reporting center would be a good thing, as I say, as long as it's people that want the help. If it's just something to try to get out of a charge or, you know, have your sentence dropped if you complete the day reporting center, then it's not going to function properly like it should.
Thank you. Question 13. Back to 60 seconds now. What changes, if any, would you implement to address the prisoner reentry program in Washington County? From your perspective, what is the sheriff's role in providing for successful reentry into the community, minimizing recidivism? Mr. Williams.
I believe, like, in treating everybody equal. Just because somebody has, you know, made a bad decision doesn't make them a bad person. So I think we should help in every way to try to get them back into the workforce, back into the community, make it easier for them. There again, as long as that person is a person that is receptive to the help and wants to change their ways.
Thank you. Mr. Albert.
I think we need to implement, and I know there's programs currently while you're incarcerated to, you know, prepare you to reenter into the community and be productive. I think we need to probably expand on that a little bit more. It's a manpower issue, without a doubt. So that's something that, you know, have to be looked at. But I feel that we need to prepare them to reenter back into the community to be productive citizens of society.
Thank you. Mr. Alton.
Absolutely. I believe the sheriffs and the sheriff's office in general plays a major role in reentry programs and getting people prepared to come back into society and be productive members of the society. And as sheriff, I will support those programs, and we will work to make sure that happens.
Thank you. Mr. McLeod.
I want to say that pertaining to that question, I think training programs is very important, because when I worked at the jail in Winchester, Virginia, too many times I've seen young men went out the system and come right back in within 90 days, simply because there were no programs for them to get themselves involved in. We got to figure out where to place them, what kind of jobs they want to do, and that's unacceptable. We should be able to put them in some type of program to help them develop themselves, and that way they can go out in the job market.
Thank you. Mr. Olsinger.
I'm very interested in finding some resources that are willing to work with us for re-entry into the job market. I think jobs are the biggest piece of the puzzle, I truly do. But additionally, I want to set up a program so that we're also addressing veterans issues with people that are in the correctional facilities. Veterans get in there because of service-connected reasons that are not of their fault, and I want to make sure that we're identifying those issues and that we're providing them the services that they need.
Thank you. Next question, number 14. With a total minority population of just over 23%, our county continues to become more culturally and ethnically diverse. This includes 12.5% of our residents that are African American and 5.8% that are Hispanic. What will you, as sheriff, do to help engage citizens of our minority communities? Mr. Albert.
I think it goes back to previous questions, being involved in the community. One thing that opened my eyes in the Leadership Washington County program was, you know, some connections to the Robert Johnson Center. You know, I was there, learned about it a little bit, being on the Habitat Board of Directors, learning about the good things that they do. And I just feel we have to be involved at maybe, for youth, I feel that we need involved at a younger age. We need to attack and get to the kids at the middle school and even elementary and be involved so they have that trust in the deputies and you know, build that it's not a, you know, the worst thing that I always hated when I was in uniform. Hey, if I was in a public place, if you don't behave, I'm going to have them lock you up. And I want it to be more of a comfort place for them to come when they see a uniform, that they should feel comfortable to come to us for help.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
As far as minority population, when we look at people, it shouldn't be color. It shouldn't be that shouldn't play a part in it. We should just see people. We're here to help people, talk to people, and be engaged with anybody in the community at all. It shouldn't have anything to do with being minority, but you got to put yourself in those communities and not be afraid to talk to them. And I consider myself very good at doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Holsinger.
Our agency strives to make sure that we are representative of the community with regard to hiring. But additionally, one of the things that I think is going to be very important is that we look at incentivizing for our deputies, them going out and learning second languages. I think that is huge. This is something that at the shift level we deal with all the time. Right now we have very few people who are bilingual working for us, and I think we need to incentivize those that are already employed with us to be able to do with that so that those communication lines are open and clear.
Thank you. Mr. Alton.
It is just a matter of getting into these communities and talking with the people, talking with the leaders, and see what they want from the sheriff's office or what they need, what their needs are for the sheriff's office. I'd also like to see our deputies get involved in a lot of these after-school programs. The Hagerstown City Police runs a police athletic league program that is very good for targeted towards children. And I would like to see the sheriff's office get involved with that program as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McLeod.
That's where community policing comes in. I think when officers have a very good rapport with the people in the community, trust eventually comes to play. And if the community trusts the officers 99% of the time, when there's an issue or a major problem, they will come to that officer and say, listen, this is the situation, this is what's going on over there, and if you can take care of it, we would like you to take care of it. Other than that, if we don't have any type of community policing, the problem will never be solved.
Thank you. Next, we're getting into human resources and leadership development. Question 15. What are your plans for the additional hiring and retention of sworn deputies and corrections officers? How many positions are currently vacant? Mr. Albert.
On the positions vacant, it depends on, where, if patrol deputies, I think they're at right around 6. In the detention centers where we have a bigger need right now, and I think it's currently around 15 to 18 short. This is a difficult thing. The job market has changed. I currently run the 911 center, and I'm offering overtime every day. We have nobody that they don't want to pick it up. The younger generation and our workforce have changed. They want, and this isn't a bad thing, it's just we have to change with the times on, they want their time off. So that they're willing to come in and do their 8 hours or 12 hours or whatever their shift is, but then they want their time off. That's very valuable to them, which I'm all about family first with in the 911 center in my previous employment, and will be at the sheriff's department. It's something that, I feel we have to, and I hit the stop sign, so I'm not getting donuts now.
Mr. McLeod.
I think where that is concerned, officers get burnt out. So we do have to, I guess, hire more officers for the capacity of the sheriff department. I don't know how many officers within the department at this time, but however, they also need to hire more minorities. The department doesn't have a lot of minority officers, and I think minority officers will serve a very good purpose on the sheriff department, particularly in going out to do community policing, getting to know the neighbors and the people in the environment as to who, what, when, where, and why, and all these different types of stuff.
Thank you. Mr. Alton.
So the patrol levels are getting currently closer to being fully staffed, and there is still a need at the bigger need at the detention center. I believe recruitment starts with retention, or good recruitment starts with retention. If you have employees that are happy to come to work and look forward to coming to work and believe in their administration and the administration's plan, you're going to be able to recruit more people, because those that you are retaining are going to go out and tell people, this is a good place to come work, you need to come work here, and that is going to be our goal, or my goal as sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
I believe the biggest thing with the hiring and retention is their officers knowing that their sheriff is going to have their back. Also knowing that the sheriff is going to be out there doing, excuse me, the same job that they are doing. Be out on the street helping them. I think that goes leaps and bounds with the officers knowing that you're going to be out there doing the same job that they're doing. And treating them as an equal. I know there's a chain of command, but I put my pants on one leg at a time like everybody else. So treat your officers as an equal, follow the chain of command, but don't talk down on your officers or belittle your officers.
Thank you. Mr. Holsinger.
One of the things that I think is very important is we need to bring our recruitment up into the modern era. We need to start using online recruitment tools and dashboards so that we can pre-vet individuals far outside the area that may be interested in coming here to work as law enforcement. Once we hire them, we have to make sure that they have opportunities within the agency. Right now, we have a situation where it takes a very long time to be promoted, and that's not fair if you have somebody that is very capable of being a supervisor. And I want to make sure that we're able to streamline that process so that people who want to promote and can promote can do it successfully. Also, unifying the 3 divisions is going to go a long way to making people feel better about coming to work, because I absolutely understand that morale is a huge piece of this puzzle.
Thank you. Number 16, got 75 seconds. Colonel Wilkinson is retiring, and a number of other current senior members of leadership are in the county drop program, including the patrol commander and assistant patrol commander. What is your plan to work with and then eventually backfill these critical senior leadership vacancies? Mr. McLeod.
Since I'm not too familiar with the sheriff department, my first thing would be to get the most qualified individuals to fit those positions that is going to become vacant. Most qualified in the sense that know the job, know the neighborhood, know the environment, know the people who lives in the neighborhood, know the business owners and everything. In that way, there could be better communication in regards to putting those people in those positions and having them served.
Thank you. Mr. Holsinger.
Well, the first thing that I'll tell you is I'm not going to go to the sheriff's department as their new leader and start chopping off heads. We're going to retain the people that are in the drop program, and as long as they want to be in that position, they can continue until their time is out. And I think that's really important. My chief deputy, his name is Mark Faith, and he was a major with the agency, retired. He's worked in all 3 of the divisions, and he's very knowledgeable about the budgeting for each one of those divisions. So I feel very confident that he is a fantastic pick for my second in command. With regard to the appointments of a new warden, possibly, a patrol commander, and a commander down at Judicial, I do have ideas of people that I would like to see in those positions, but there will be a process. Everything we do will be fair.
Thank you. Mr. Alt.
The first thing I did when I decided I was going to run for sheriff from day one was name my chief deputy, which is Josh McCauley. I talked about him earlier. Because I knew in the next sheriff's first term, not only Colonel Wilkinson, but as you mentioned, you're going to be losing your entire command staff. So Josh will be my chief deputy. The next patrol commander is the current lieutenant in charge of criminal investigations who replaced me, Joel Footen. When the current patrol commander retires, he will be taking over that position. The other 2 positions will be backfilled from inside the agency in a very fair and transparent process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
I would surround myself with, qualified people. When I first decided to run for sheriff, a trooper I worked with really close in the Warren squad, Wesley Herman, everybody knows him as Rusty Herman. He would be my chief deputy, because he's also a people person. He was stationed at the sheriff's department for 12 years in the Warrant Squad. I worked very closely with him and other people in the Warrant Squad. And the people that are retiring and in the drop program, I would try to hire within the sheriff's department, search for qualified people inside the sheriff's department to fill those positions.
Thank you. Mr. Albert?
This is something that law enforcement goes through. I experienced it with Natural Resource Police. We had a huge hiring time in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. A lot of those people retired, and we had a lot of inexperienced or less tenured people take positions of command. It's something that definitely happens. It would definitely be a transparent and a fair and equitable process administered by outside the sheriff's office. For me, I have not named the chief deputy yet. A lot of things can happen in between now and the election. I have a few people in mind, but I felt that I would run on my own accord, and you know, I'd name the chief deputy if the people select me as sheriff. They would, you know, trust my judgment to pick that next person. One thing that law enforcement does do terrible, and this is across the board, is we never prepare people for that next step. And I think we need a mentoring, maybe outside the sheriff's office or maybe with neighboring jurisdictions, to mentor our next leaders that are going to take those spots, because we do a terrible job of preparing them. And now I've hit the stop sign twice.
And we're still, and we're way ahead of schedule too. So, you've made it to the last question, and we saved the hardest one for last. Yeah, and you can have 2 minutes if you want to. So, the question is, why should we vote for you? So we'll start with Mr. McLeod.
Why should you vote for me? Because of what I stand for. I believe in fairness around the table for each and everyone, whether you're white, black, green, yellow, whatever. I don't believe in color. And I think everybody deserves a fair chance to show their capabilities, what they're able to do. Again, as I said, I'm very fair, and I believe in certain things. I go by the policies and procedures, what I stand for.
Thank you. Mr. Holsinger.
Well, I am the only person running for the office of sheriff that is still a certified police officer, and again, I serve as a patrol shift commander. I have served in many different supervisory capacities throughout my career. I am known for my fairness and my trustworthiness. I would be an excellent steward of your agency because I understand all 3 divisions. I understand their needs. I understand the changes that must come. And when it comes to working with the community, I probably have more prevention and outreach experience than any candidate or anyone even in the sheriff's office, which I think is very important given the fact that we need to be building trust and we need to be making the community feel safe through empowerment.
Thank you. Mr. Alton.
When I got into law enforcement, I didn't do it to be a politician or become a politician. And when I joined the race for sheriff, I didn't do it to be a politician or become a politician, because I'm not a politician, I'm a cop. When I announced my retirement, one of my bosses brought me in and said, I'm worried about you because I don't know what you're going to do. Law enforcement is who you are and it's what defines you. And that is why I decided to run. I spent 25 years serving this community, the community that I love, protecting this community from people that would prey on our citizens, and doing my best to make sure that I stood with the victims and the families of victims that can no longer speak for themselves. I'm the only candidate with a proven record being tough on crime. I am supported by law enforcement with, conservatively, more than 1,000 years of experience. And that includes the longest-serving sheriff in Washington County, 2 acting sheriffs in West Virginia, multiple former and current police chiefs. So I ask the voters, listen to the experts, do your research. If you don't believe in law enforcement, listen to the victims that support me, the victims of a murdered baby, the family members of a murdered police officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Albert.
I'm, I'm a little different from the other candidates here, I feel. One thing that I can bring to the table is a new set of eyes on the department. The last time that's been done was 1986 when Charlie Mades took office. You know, not a bad thing, but I bring a different perspective, different glasses that I would be looking through. I was raised in the state system. I felt that the game wardens and conservation policing was very community oriented. You know, sometimes I'd be the only officer on in Frederick and Washington County. So I had to build relationships with other agencies because they were my backup, the sheriff's office, state police, federal agencies. I've built those relationships over the years. I have extensive experience in the legislature. I was FOP president for 6 years of a statewide organization that, you know, I fought for officers' pay, benefits, and you know, law enforcement bill of rights type things. So I have that experience. I have relationships built in Annapolis over the years, and you know, I have that experience. I have budgetary experience. Currently, I have. I thought the state and county would be similar, but coming to the county, I've learned a lot being at the 911 center for budget, purchasing, hiring, and you know, how the county ways are. So that's given me an immense experience. But I just bring a different set of eyes. I've been involved in the community all my life. From 3 days old, my mom threw me in a shopping cart in our Mulpaugh grocery store, and that was my bassinet. So customer service oriented, and I'll be involved in the community. And I'm not getting this third strike.
3 strikes. Mr. Williams?
I think the biggest thing is, you know, not being a politician. Don't lie to your people. If you make statements and promises to people, you need to keep your promises. What you say, do what you say you're gonna do. Don't just do it to get elected and then change. Actions speak louder than words. So if you know, like I say, if you're out there with your officers and they know that you have their back, you're going to do the same thing they're going to do, not send them in some place that you would not go yourself. I think that speaks volumes with the officers. You know, we need to take care of people and officers first. I mean, before yourself, your officers and your public need to be taken care of. And they need to know that as a leader in law enforcement that you're going to be there if needed. Always make time for people and make time for your officers. I think that's a big, you know, part of it. Be in the community all the time, not just when it's election time. You know, your community should always see your face. I've lived in Washington County all my life. I couldn't tell you, about 5 years ago, I got to see our current sheriff at a church seminar we had at Lappin's Crossroads. The only time I've ever seen him, you know, out publicly, unless it's like a public speaking somewhere, that for a photo op or, you know, on the news. So just be involved.
Thank you. All right, you made it. Can we have a round of applause for the candidates? I'm going to pat myself on the back, too, because I'm the only one that had to stand up the whole time, I think, unless we had a cameraman back there. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give Aaron a round of applause for moderating a very job well done. Thank you. And again, I would like to give another round of applause for our candidates. Let's thank them. Thank you for your energy running for public service. It's not easy, I know that. And thank you for respecting our time limits. Mr. Albert, you stopped at the stoplight. You didn't run through it, so you're good. Well, we'll see. We'll have to ask Judge what he thinks about that. So, but thank you for your efforts on behalf of the community. Also like to thank Antietam Broadband for recording this. Let's give them a round of applause. And Jammers Indoors, let's give them a round of applause for the continued sponsorship. And lastly, thank all of you, members of our community, for being educated. Again, we don't endorse candidates, but we do endorse getting to know the candidates and voting whom you believe would do the best job. So my last reminder and plea is to get out and vote. And have a good rest of the day. Thank you.